When artists say, draw what you see, not what you think you see, that can be really confusing. I was really confused with that question when I first started. I thought, well, if I knew what I was looking at, then I might be able to draw it. But most of us don't actually draw what we're looking at. We'll draw what our brain thinks a bee, for instance, should look like. And that's often where the realism starts to maybe fall apart a little bit. As I'm working on this bumblebee, I'll show you 5 ways that artists learn to see a little bit differently. So, number one, we need to stop seeing a bee. Now, that might sound strange, but bear with me. The moment our brain recognizes something, it starts making assumptions. It will say, that's a wing, that's a leg, that's a fuzzy yellow stripe. But we need to try and look beyond that label. Instead of seeing a bee, I start looking for shapes. So the wing becomes a collection of maybe curves, the body becomes a rounded sort of forms, the dark markings are sort of a little bit abstract. So when you stop drawing what something is and start drawing the shapes you can actually see, then accuracy becomes better, it improves. Number two would be to look for relationships. So, one of the biggest differences between starting out and when you get more experienced is comparison. So, I'm asking questions: how wide is this strip compared to the one next to it? Where does the wing start relative to the eye? How long is this leg compared to the body? So, putting it together, it's really about individual parts. It's about how those parts relate to one another. And so, realism often comes from those proportions rather than detail as well. Number three, look for values before the details. So, again, when we start out, it's quite easy to focus on details first. Those tiny hairs, the veins in the wing, the texture, etc. But before any of that matters, we need to understand the light and dark patterns. So, if I was to squint at this bee, most of the details would disappear. So what would be left would be the shapes of light and shadow. Those value patterns, they create the illusion of the form, and the details will simply sit on top. That's why I'm often mapping in the areas at the very foundational levels before even thinking about the finer details and textures. So number four, look for the colour variation. At first glance, this bee will obviously look yellow and black, simple. However, as I study the reference, I will start to notice the warm yellows, the cooler yellows, the golden oranges, the browns, greys, and those reflected colours. Nature is rarely made up of a single colour. And I always say this, the more carefully you observe those little shifts, the more believable your work will become. The goal isn't to colour the bee, the goal is to observe those colours that are already there. Number five, look for the edges. Again, we can overlook the edges when we're starting out. Not every edge is sharp. Some areas of the bee have like crisp, clear areas. Others fade softly into those surrounding colours, and as artists, we're constantly asking, so where is that edge sharp? Where is it soft? Where does it almost disappear altogether? These edge variations, that's what help create the depth, focus, and the realism. And sometimes what you leave soft is just as important as what you make sharp. So, when artists say draw what you see, not what you think you see, or just draw what you see, what they're meaning is observation, is learning to just see instead of labels, look closer, look deeper, observe better. So, relationships of colours instead of just assuming it's, just a colour. Values first instead of the details, and those colour variations instead of colour names, and edges instead of the outlines. The wonderful thing is that observation is a skill. We all practice it. We're never stopping, we never get there, I guess. The more practice we take, the more we'll see, the more we'll notice, the more colour you'll see. When you glance at that reference photo, you'll eventually see with your natural eye, yeah, I can see hints of, warm browns or oranges in there, etc. Not just what your brain expects it to see. So it works really well with the bee, because the bee, you may just, as I say, it could be black or it just could be yellow, that's it. But when you really look at the bee and notice the bee, and when we're observing it, there's so much more. And that's the beautiful thing about nature and the beautiful thing about art. I hope you've enjoyed this quick tips. Please do like and subscribe the channel. If you'd like to follow along on this particular tutorial, it is available on my Patreon at Wildlife Art by Claire. See you on the next lesson. Bye for now.